Episode 8 ends with Will and Julius peacefully hanging out with Cerridwen. Then, out of nowhere, she told Will to take off his clothes. After that, in the next panel, we see Will without his shirt as he asks why he has to be naked. Julius says that he knew it. Cerridwen is some kind of freaky fetishist. Cerridwen looks embarrassed by hearing this, as she tells him that it is not like what they think, explaining this is a necessary evil and telling Will to put his hands down. However, Julius doesn't budge, as he tells her that it's exactly what they think it is, telling her she is 100% an authentic pervert of a witch. But he suddenly gets silent as he sees all of the scars on Will's body. Then Julius thinks that he has heard rumors, but wonders just how much he tortured himself to get into the tower. Anyway, we then head to Cerridwen, who texts Will's back and asks him when and how he got this scar on his back. Will tells her that it was probably when he was little, when he shielded Elfie. Cerridwen then looks smiled and then slaps his back, which makes Will embarrassed a little bit and asks her what she is doing now. But she tells him that she is making sure she knows where to find the key to the next door. Then the next panel is kind of strange, as Cerridwen seems to be using Will's head for something else, explaining that the truth is she has been watching their training in secret. And then she tells them it was a very good job coming up with the idea to anger the magic. If Will can just control the angered magic, then he will be able to master Whis. That concept is correct indeed. She then winks right at Julius as she tells him that he could stand to be a little more true to himself, but he really is an excellent mage. Julius, however, is just silent. He then tells her to spare him her obvious flattery, asking whether he was wrong or not. Cerridwen then tells him that he wasn't wrong as far as angering the magic or saving it up inside himself. Will has already achieved that. After all, the blood of a mage of a wand flows in Will's veins, explaining that it's just that his body is a little unique. Instead of directing the magical energy outside, it greedily hoards it inside. Though his flesh may scream, if he takes any hit of external magic, his body will store it. Will is obviously super confused, but Cerridwen tells him that his assignment now is to figure out how to access the magic that he has stored inside, telling him that, in other words, he will learn how to charge the spell without help. That is the next stage for him to attain. However, Will then tells her to wait. He says that he thought charging Wish was dependent on other people's spells, on external power. Cerridwen tells him that it is true, but that is not the only way, telling him that if he needs proof, then he should remember that he already activated abilities other than the spells he has charged. After that, Cerridwen starts to create a circle around him and tells him he is now going to learn how to do it on command. She continues that the story of his magic is tied to his blood and his memories. By retracing that path, he will gain the ability to produce a new charge, one that doesn't depend on the magic of others, a charge of feelings. Will was amazed after hearing this. After that, Cerridwen goes behind Will and pushes him forward as she tells him that he will use the power of his thoughts and emotions. We then see some sort of fire starting to appear right around him. Cerridwen tells him that now she will pour her magical energy into the key and guide him to a certain place. When he is there, he needs to remember his origins and carve into himself the method of reviving those thoughts. After that, she starts to activate her wand and put something on Will's back. She then says, "Here the oath binds, true name of sword concealed. The uncharted bloodline traced, here is the keyhole find, the good name of which borrow, now to unfold the tale." She then smiles at Will and tells him to have a good time. After that, she puts the key forward and tells it to unlock, calling it Through Wistoria. It then looks like Will's soul almost goes out of his body, and we then see it going through all of his memories and he is just looking at them. After falling for a while, he suddenly wakes up. Looks like he came to the past as a younger version. He looks around and wonders where he even is. But just then, he hears a familiar voice and a girl running at him. Of course, it's Elfie, who asks Will if he is okay. Elfie tells him to come on and that the woods can be dangerous, so they should hold hands. This is so sweet. Will is just a bit surprised to see her. However, Elfie then with a huge smile on her face tells him that she will keep him safe. After that, we then cut to Julius, who comes into a room and asks Cerridwen what is going on, telling her that he has been unconscious for 4 days with no sign of waking up. Cerridwen looks back at Julius as she tells him that he is diving into his dreams. She explains that she used her magic to give him a catalyst, and now he is working on reviving his past. Julius is super confused as he asks her how all of that is supposed to help him get this new power. Cerridwen then takes her tongue around her lips as she says that she isn't quite sure it will work. After all, the sword is under Finn's jurisdiction. Julius just looks at her and asks her if she is serious. She then puts her hand on Will's chest as she explains that she has no intention of criticizing Finn's method. However, she does think that if they are going to stand against the heavens, they will need a different approach. Julius asks her what she is talking about, but Cerridwen continues and says history is buried within your body. The tracks made by wand and sword constantly intersecting, and trace them all the way back to his origins, and then, if possible, she hopes that someday he may reach the source of it all. So this is getting interesting. After that, in the next panel, we see Will who thinks that his hands and feet are smaller, and not to mention Elfie is younger too. It's like he has gone back to the old days. Elfie then with a huge smile asks him what's wrong. Will, however, just looks around as he wonders if this is really his past, wondering if Cerridwen used her magic to send him back in time. No, there is no magic powerful enough to turn back time. That would mean that this is a memory. However, he questions whether he is dreaming about something that happened in the past. Although while he was thinking, we see Elfie yelling towards him calling his name. But since he still isn't answering, we can see that Elfie is getting pretty mad as she looks at Will super annoyed. After that, Elfie throws herself right at Will and screams at him to look at her. Will is super confused, but he then looks at Elfie, who is close to crying. Elfie asks him if he was thinking about another girl just now. Will, however, tells her that he wasn't. Elfie then continues as she tells Will that he is always spoiling Claire and the other girls at the orphanage. To which Will responded as he is just trying to help father, who is the director of the orphanage. Elfie then gets even more mad as she tells Will not to do that, telling him that he isn't allowed to cheat on her. Oh my god, this is actually super wholesome. Wait a minute, just think about it. This is the same person who is currently one of the Magia Wanda. Anyway, we then get into Will's brain as he thinks that Elfie was even more selfish back then. Will then speaks up and asks her how he can get her to forgive him. Elfie looks right at Will as she tells him that he can do it by giving her a hug. Their eyes meet each other and both of them start to blush. After that, Will hugs Elfie tightly and that makes her blush even more. She then tells him to pat her on the head as well. And Will then just does that. We can see Elfie is just laughing and having the biggest smile ever. We then head into Will's head as he explains that it's all so familiar. He remembers he used to do this to get her out of her bad moods. Elfie then takes Will in her hand and starts to walk away. She tells him that now that she is full of willpower, it's time to go and slay the beast. Will looks really concerned by asking what beast. Elfie looks back at him and explains that there is supposed to be a weird beast in the forest, saying that father doesn't like it being here, so they are going to get rid of it for him. Will continues to look worried as he tells Elfie that it isn't safe. He continues as she can do amazing things, but he cannot even use a speck of magic. But just as he says that, he thinks he didn't mean to say that, thinking this is the past, so is he repeating exactly what he said back then? Elfie then tells him that it's okay, because she brought their favorite book after all. She explains that this will give them all the courage they need. She looks right at Will and tells him that everything going to be just fine. She said she will be here to protect him. Will looks at her as he thinks that it's right. The old him was a coward who was afraid of everything. Elfie was always protecting him. This made Will wonder when it was that Elfie started depending on him. Will then takes her hand and the two of them start to rush through the woods. However, we then see this insane weird beast looking at them. After that, we head back to the two of them and Elfie says there's a war in a place called Regarden and some scary people and monsters escaped and came here. Will ask her if that is true and Elfie tells him that it is, telling him that the beast in the forest came from Regarden too and now it's making trouble. Will then thinks that's all coming back to him. 10 years ago, he and Elfie went into the forest behind the orphanage. Will then speaks up and asks if she can handle it. She just has a huge smile as he tells Will that of course she can. Meanwhile, Will in his head thinks that he definitely remembers this conversation, but everything after that is a blur. So he wonders what exactly happened after that. Just then, as they are happily walking and holding hands, we see the creature starts to attack from behind them. And it makes both of them fly away. They both hit the ground, but as they get back up, they look at it and thinks that it's a crystal monster. However, Will on the other hand thinks that it's not a monster. He has seen enough now to know it's a creature, a magical weapon made by mages. It's already been damaged, so it really did escape the warp. The monster then starts to roar at them. Will gets scared. Meanwhile, Elfie tells him to stay right there, and she walks towards it. Will is just still on the ground and calls out her name. Elfie then looks super determined as she tells him she is going to take it down, explaining that she will do it with the awesome spell she thought of. With that, she uses Ars Vis, and we then see the first showcase of her ice clones. Elfie then gets a smug look on herself as she says that she and a bunch of other she's are going to beat it black and blue. Will, on the ground, cannot believe as she is multicasting to Arsvis. Her magic control was so advanced even at this age. He always knew that Elfie was amazing after all, but even then, he wonders why he has such a bad feeling about this. We then see Elfie saying that here she goes, and she then uses Tearis Nono, which send a ton of ice crystals right at the monster. But just as they are getting closer, we cut to Will, who screams at her to run. Because after that, we see that the ice crystals that were going to the monster are now heading right back at Elfie. We see her ice clones getting destroyed. Just then, he gets one of the ice crystals directed right at him. We then see both him and Elfie being sent back. Will tries to get up as he says it's a magic reflection, and that is what this creature was built for. Will then spots Elfie on the ground and screams at her to run. Elfie, however, tells Will that she isn't hurt and that she isn't even scared. She continues as she says that she is going to take the monster down and protect Will by herself. And as Will hears that, we can see him looking super destroyed. We then get into his head. He explains that he cannot move, but Elfie is about to get hurt, and it's all his fault. He tells himself to get a grip and to move and to run to her. After that, we see Will start to grip the grass as he thinks that the person he hated the most in the world was the version of him that needed her to protect him all the time. With that, he tells himself the final time to go and do it. And after that, we can see Willie standing on his feet as he starts to rush forward. We then cut to Elfie, who is using another of her spells right at the monster. But of course, the monster just sends them right back at her. Luckily, we can see that before any of the attacks managed to hit Elfie, Will came and blocked them with his back as he got on top of her. Elfie realizes that Will is bleeding with that attack just now. Elfie's eyes go blank as she calls out to Will before she starts to scream again and again. Will then falls right on top of her, and Elfie screams at him multiple times to just wake up. However, instead we get into Will's head as he thinks that he remembers now that he shielded Elfie and passed out. But he wonders what happened next and who it was that saved Elfie. We see that Will's eyes are starting to fade. But then, in the next panel, we see a strange lady telling him to awake. This makes Will's eyes get back in an instant. And after that, we can even see some weird things coming out of Will's body. Will himself explained that he feels so hot, his flesh is on fire, and that his whole body is about to explode, thinking that his body is a vessel and that it's becoming a sword. After that, we see Elfie is putting her hand through Will's hair as she calls his name. However, Will is just in his brain as he thinks that there was more to this adventure. After that, we can see that he is getting on his feet. He starts to walk away from Elfie and towards the monster. We then get a close-up of his hand while thinking this is the origin of the sword and the beginning of Wish, saying that he is now fully charged. With that, we get an ice spear right in his hand. However, we then see the monster starting to roar right at Will. But still, Will looks locked in as he says, Tearis Wis, and he shoots the ice spear at the monster. And we can even see how much it shocks Elfie. But Will then thinks that it all makes sense now. He now sees why he knew back then that nothing could stop this power. He recognized it, Elfie's magic had created it before, explaining this is that Mage Blade. With that, we see Will going to slash the monster. However, as he hits him, we can see the both of them manage to collide with each other. Will looks a bit weird, but just at that moment, we see Elfie who screams out to him. After that, we can see her right by Will's side. As the two of them then look right at each other, the two of them hold the weapon together. And then, with all of their power, they pierce the monster. And we can see the monster being frozen solid. However, after that, both Will and Elfie fall backwards due to the force, but they manage to fall next to each other. And then they hold one another, and Elfie tells Will that he has magic, and just now this is his own magic. Will, however, doesn't answer, as we can see that he is beginning to once again lose consciousness. He thinks that this is his origin story, the beginning of the Mage Blade, a precious feeling that he won't forget again. He will never forget this bond that he shares with Elfie. We then see his eyes closing even more while Elfie is just smiling at him. But then, just when they are about to close fully, Elfie thanks Will, and this is so wholesome. I can't even lie. After that, on the next panel, we see Julius and Kiki being right on him. However, Julius screams and asks if he is finally awake. Will is super confused, but Julius then tells himself to hurry up, explaining that he has been asleep for 6 days and the second bloom is about to start. Will just looks down at his hand. Meanwhile, Julius asks him if he is even listening. We then see Cerridwen on the side. She asks Will if he managed to access the source of the magical energy anchored inside him. Will closes his eyes as he says that he did. Cerridwen continues as she tells him that he retraced his life's path, asking if he can now revive it. Will tells her that he's sure he can anytime. And then, with a proud smile on her face, tells him to go out there and write the new tale of the Mage Blade. And Will tells her that yes, ma'am. And we then see him walking out with determined steps. After that, we can see the ceremony, where we see Claire saying that Emma has been granted the blessing of wind, and Lyril and Gordon get to join the Far faction. We then cut to Kreuz, putting up his glasses as he thinks that they may be desperate to fill their ranks, but the elemental faction standards are far too low, explaining that these mages are children who only just got out of school. But it seems like no one cares what he thinks right now. As we then move on to Claire, who tells them that there they have it. She congratulates them by saying they can head to their factions. After that, she says the second bloom is just about over. But before she can finish her sentence, we see Lihana saying that Will and Julius aren't here yet. Wignall adds that they will be disqualified if the bloom ends now. But we then move towards Kreuz, as he says that waiting any longer would be a waste of time. He suspects that they failed to come up with an effective strategy and fled the challenge in despair. We then see Claire, who is super angry and thinks in her head that it's what the guy who deliberately tried to stop them says. Kreuz then starts to look with confidence as he says that those who run from the purgatory in depth of research have no right to climb the tower, explaining that the upper institute will see to it that they are looked after. He then calls out to Elfie and says he trusts that she has no objections, and we just see a silent Elfie who is praying for them. Just right at then, Kreuz starts to look weird because we see both Julius and Will sprinting onto the room as they apologize for being late. We then see a super annoyed Kreuz. Meanwhile, both of them announce that they are here for the bloom. We see Colette's eyes light up as she sees Will, and Wignall then calls out to Julius. Meanwhile, Kreuz just puts up his glasses as he calls them lowly pigs, saying that giving them more trouble than they are worth. After that, we see more of those magic snakes starting to appear. And Kreuz tells everyone that, just like last time, they will evaluate their qualifications as a wand by means of a suitable challenge. He goes further and he asks if they are agreed to the terms, directly asking to Will and Honorable Magia Vanda. From the Magia Wander, we see that Carriot who says that they have no arguments here. We also have Will who tells him that he also agrees. However, after that, we get into Julius' thoughts as he wonders if he is really going to be okay. He thinks that they have absolutely no idea if he actually managed to control Wiz or not. He then takes out his wand as he thinks that he will just discreetly cast a spell for him. But before he can do that, we see a magic circle appearing under him, which leaves him stunned. But we then see that it's Elfie who did it. She looks at Julius and she tells him that she has granted him her blessing, telling him to please come this way and not to do anything else. Julius tries to argue, but Elfie just has a super huge smile and she thanks him for helping Will, tells him that she now wants him to believe in Will. Julius is just silent as he thinks about in his head. He goes back and forth, but he suddenly speaks up and tells Will that if he wastes all of his hard work, then he will make him pay. Will just thanks him as he then starts to look ready. After that, he puts on his goggles and in his head tells Elfie to just wait. With that, we see the snake staring him down. Before we can see any action, we spot Cerridwen in the seating area. She explains that through her magic, the spiral path of the sword has already been opened. Will should know the steps by now, so he should show her the new world of the sword. After that, we head towards Will, who tells himself to picture it. He thinks about the book, then in the next panel, we can see him holding the book together with the younger version of Elfie. Will continues to think by saying himself to turn the page, remember those feelings, place the bookmark, and find a spot. He continues as retrace the path he walked, the story that he has lived, revive the magic that he needs. And then finally, we then see Will being able to do it by saying Tearis Wis Reloaded. And this is honestly mind blowing. Will really managed to do it. We can see from Kreuz's look how mad he is. Meanwhile, Colette explains that it's a blade of light. Or not even that, it is a sword made of ice magic. We once again see Kreuz, who is just even angrier now as he calls it impossible. And he says that he managed to produce this all on his own. But after that, we see Will with a determined look on his face, casually swinging the sword right at the magic snakes. And just that little attack makes the monster die. Sterrick explains that it is so strong, though it may not be as strong as an externally charged wish. Its destructive force is at least as great as a mid-level spell, explaining that it sure is a surprise. Anyway, Will isn't done. It seems like he tells himself to put his feelings into the blade and to use them to power the sword. And with that, he killed another one of those monsters. We then see Elfie, who gets big eyes as she watches this and says his name. Not to mention that we have Zio, with a huge smile saying that this is what he is talking about. We obviously can't forget about Cerridwen, who tells Will that he gets full marks, and not only that, but also a gold star. Just then, someone comes walking behind her. The mysterious person tells her that they choose not to intervene out of respect for her willingness to advance him to the tower, saying that it looks like it worked out. We then see that the mysterious person was Finn, but that's not even the craziest part. He then asks if he should call her Mistress Cauldron. Yes, the principal of the academy.